So we're now in progress for the February meeting of the Access Pacific User Group. Tonight, Linda Ewen is going to demonstrate how she uses temp tables in Access. And she'll explain her process and her approach and walk through some code examples. Linda has been a friend of mine for many years now, but she was also an Access developer, approximately started in, well, I guess when Access was new, but you started with databases back in the 60s, if I remember.
Well, they didn't exactly call them databases then.
All right. Well, with that, why don't I let you take over and finish off your introduction and start your presentation. Thank you for joining us.
Yes. And have everybody unmute themselves.
Okay. You can unmute for just a few seconds or for a few minutes here.
Yeah, because
go ahead.
I don't know if I should phrase the question whether you have used temp tables or if any of you have not used temp tables.
Well, phrase it.
Either way.
Either thoughts? Yeah. Any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I have used them. I actually have a demo on my website of a small sample database that does use temp tables, but I've seen them a lot. So anybody else use them regularly or at all?
I use them sometimes, Linda, but I make a external database, and when I make temp tables, I put them there and then put links in the current front end. And sometimes I use them just because they help calculations, but I generally put them somewhere else when I do make them.
Yeah, good.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
Yeah, that becomes the questions. When you say using temp tables, to me, that is a table in an external database, not in the current one. Such, I hate the growth that a table has that gets a lot of action.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a good point. I think most of us tend not to think of it as that distinction between external and internal, but you're right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I do use tables in the regular front end for temporary data, but I generally reuse the records instead of deleting them and creating them again. So like if I make a temp table for a calendar or something like that, I'll just reuse those same records and put different data in.
However, they cause incredible bloat if you keep them in the front end. So, what I'm going to show you is how it's, I was told that when you're teaching or talking about something, you never say how easy it is. It can make people feel stupid if they don't get it. But it's a relatively simple process to create a temp table database that's external. So, which I'm going to show you. I mean, the advantage. Okay, now temp tables are very much like views. I mean, right? It's just combining all the data. And often you can get away with a union query to come up with a lot of the stuff that I use in temp tables. But by creating the temp tables, and I try to create them locally, so you get really fast access. Also, you can add columns that don't exist in your data. For example, how many people are familiar with the sort key? Or is there anyone not familiar with the sort key?
Sort key?
Yes. Do you know what a sort key is?
Not sure I know what it is.
Excuse me?
No, I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I think, Linda, we call things differently, but I'm really looking forward to seeing your examples. And I agree, this is a really good topic.
Yeah. I'm hesitating because I may have a different name for it too, but
because with a sort key, you can just do the most amazing things on your output. Clearly you can do that with a report, but temp tables are especially great when you want to put out a spreadsheet, which many of my clients seem to like. So I'll show you that as well. Also, I know sometimes, they say, well, when you're finished with the temp table, you should delete the data or delete the table. I always keep it because it's a great source to figure out if something went wrong, what happened. So also, I'm not sure about how Access maximizes the queries, but when you have a temp table, you really get a much better throughput with filters because they filter, you're in the table, and you don't have to worry about the optimization or whether they're indexed or any of that. I mean, the disadvantage of a temp table is that it's not always current data. So a view or a query means you've got to keep rerunning the query every time that you want to get the data. It is always current. It doesn't waste storage, but it often you have one query calling another query, and that can often be very time consuming. Whereas if you throw everything into a temp database, it usually goes faster. So much so that I actually found at one point I was working on, somebody had messed up a report and I was fixing it and I was getting it filtered and it was running, a lot better. And then I tried it without, just with all the data, and it ran incredibly slowly. And even though it was not an ODBC or any of that, I loaded everything into a temp table just like I had with the filter data, and it ran blazingly fast. So I'm not 100% sure of why that worked, but it worked out very well. Also, a special note on ODBC links. In some cases, they can be incredibly slow, and worse, in some cases, I couldn't get the data out at all. It came in really funny. And with an ODBC link, if you try to use a filter, it could be just awful. It just takes forever. I don't know what they do with the ODBC, but trying to filter the data. So what I often do when I'm in an ODBC situation is I read all the tables into temp tables initially, and then I work with them there. It also prevents you from accidentally overwriting data. And, it depends on, the ODBC and the ODBC link, but it can often work very, very well by just throwing the whole thing into a temp table. And I, as I will show you in the demo, one of the things I do is I indicate when the temp table was last created and how long it took to run. Now, in this particular case, because the presentation, there's very, very tiny amounts of data, which I got off the internet, fake names, fake products, and there isn't really much. So all the amounts of time are like 0 minutes. But basically, so let me show you one of the a simple one. Now, do you see the Access database?
Yes.
Yep,
Okay.
we're good to go now.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through the tables and explain what they are. All right. This table shows the report name. I have a much more elaborate reporting scheme that I could show possibly at a later date. And it shows the time that it was last run and the time to run. So the user has the opportunity to say, I don't, if it took 30 minutes or something, I'd rather keep the data that I used, this morning. I don't need to refresh it, right? Okay, and then we have, temp table clean, which is totally clean, which is going to be important in our creation of the external database. Okay, table products is linked to data, and it's probably garbage stuff, but I pulled it off the internet. And this is the actual database data. Okay. Well, you can see it can't find the temp table test table because I haven't created it yet. All right. and then the queries which will fill it. So let's go to, I'll tell you what, let's go to creating the temp tables.
Could you maximize your access window so we can see it better?
Sure, better?
Hey.
Okay, we all set? Okay, so now let me show you the code for creating the, okay. To create the temp table, what it does is it, let's see if I can explain this as best as possible. It looks for all the tables. In this case, there's just one. I'll show you, clean. And it looks for anything that says clean, right? And it circles around. Can everybody read the code, or do you want me to explain more?
Maybe you can just give us an idea of what it does. We don't need to. go
Okay, here,
step
all
by
right. So
step,
what
but
it
just
does is
what
it counts the number of tables, right? And with and then with the DB current, here, set DB current database, right? For all, it looks through all the tables to find the ones that are there already. In other words, if there's a temp table there already, it's going to delete it. If there's a link like this, going to delete this one. Let's go through it one at a time. We'll step through it. That'll be the easiest, right?
No, it's fine. You're just creating it out there. So
Yeah,
your
let's go through
process is to actually create a database out there and then create tables in it.
Yeah, what we're going to do, okay, we set the current database. We look for all the ones that are with clean. Move last to get the count. Okay. Move first. Okay. Redim the tables. 1, 2. Okay. And now it goes through and looks for all the ones that are clean. Now it deletes the ones. It's going to delete. Okay, it creates the temp in case there isn't one. Okay, and it should have. Okay, it didn't find, I guess it didn't find any. Oh. All right.
So,
Because you say you keep your temp database out there for being able to use in the future.
Excuse me?
I mean,
It should have deleted the temp table products. Well,
it's deleting the links to them.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what she's doing is looping through the current database and deleting the links to anything that's linked to it. Then she's deleting the external database and creating it again, and then transferring.
yeah,
Yes.
that's what it looks like.
Right.
oh, there it is. See, it went away. See,
Yep.
the temp table went away.
Yep.
Yep, you got
Now
the-
it transfers. Now it came back, but this time it's completely clean. Okay. And that's it. And what it is, since you can now see my screen, if you look and see temp, we have temp, okay. And here's our temp database. All right. Which has the sort key, which we'll get into a little bit as well. Okay. Did everyone understand that? Did I?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
That's great. Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
I'm
great.
looking forward to what you're calling the sort key, like if it's a parameter on something or a property, but
Well,
anyhow,
I've
you've got us in suspense, Linda.
yeah, I've got a guess, but I'm holding my fingers crossed to find out if I'm right or wrong.
Yeah,
Okay, go.
I mean, yeah.
right.
So, okay,
So
so
you,
that's that procedure.
so
Now,
so you've created your empty.
so I've recreated it, and and frankly, even normally in real time, it goes very, very fast. Let's just run it. You'll see. We'll run. I'm going to press F5, and there it is, and it recreated it. Okay.
Which, by the way, a fast way I found was always to be dropping your temp tables when your database closed, so you don't have to process it.
Yeah.
And then it recreates the whole thing. Okay.
And I found having a temp database in your base directory that you copy to the temp directory to be quicker than
Yes.
transferring across.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the thing about it is this way your main database, the data only changes when people add and delete, right?
Right.
The forms only change, the front end only changes when you change the code. So by eliminating all the temp tables from your front end, you have no bloat at all, or minimal bloat, right?
Right. So
Any other questions?
I do have one, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding, but I'm looking at your navigation pane, and it looks like that table that's labeled temp table product spreadsheet _ clean is a local table, not an external linked table.
I'm sorry, what?
It looks to me like it's a local table in this.
Well, I do make it local. I put it on the C drive in the temp.
No, but I mean, the table is local to this ACCDB.
That's just the template table. I usually start those with uses just so
Well,
they don't
okay.
Right, because
Yeah,
there's a linked one.
But well, can we go back through your code then? Because I thought you were deleting that. That's why I'm.
She was taking off the clean from it and deleting it because notice the linked one doesn't have clean in the name. I can't read that, but I see it's a shorter name.
Okay, so yeah, so can you go through that again because I missed that step?
Well, let me go through it again.
Yeah, just.
Okay, and I'm going to stop wherever.
Oh, I see. I see where you never. I got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Stop when you get to the right there.
Okay. So it looks for all the objects that are dash clean, right?
Right.
Okay, it gets the record count. And it looks for, because when you're creating this temp database, in this particular case, I only created, one table in it. But frankly, at the start, especially with my ODBCs, when I pull everything in, I have, maybe 6 or 8 tables that I have a clean at the end of it.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So,
okay,
this is where I missed. Yeah, this is where I missed before. I didn't. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. You know what I can also do? I'll tell you what. Let me copy. And I'm going to show you, I've got another, part of this demo is going to show you how I make it all work. Okay, so I'm going to copy and paste, and we'll call it temp table clean, temp table, I don't know. It doesn't have a temp, it could be any table. Temp table, just because. Okay, and just the structure. Okay, so now we have 2 cleans. So let's go here. Let's run reset and start from the beginning. Okay. So now it goes through, and this time it should find 2 tables. Let's see.
Okay.
Yeah, see, 2. and it goes through 2 of them. And then it only, this is in case the C temp is already there, or if, you know, the database is there, you want to ignore it. Okay. You know, you don't want to keep recreating it. Okay. So now, by the way, a note, I accidentally, when I sent out, you know, I'm going to recreate this for everybody, but the original that I sent out created an MDB. Just shows you how long I've been using this.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, and I used to use this and it worked just perfectly fine. Maybe it was the version that was wrong. But at any rate, I looked it up on Access and they now suggest this. So I use this. Okay. And now, and it should have 2 and it should have, see, and now it has temp table just because, right?
Got it.
So if we look at it, you know, here, it's over. Let me go into Windows Explorer. And if you look at the temp, which should be around here anyway, and I want to show you something else because it is important. Let's see, where are we? God, local disk, temp, come on. Temp. And now you're going to see there are 2 databases, right?
Right. Got it.
Okay. Now there's something, especially, you know, for people who work, you know, with SQL or work in environments where everybody's like sharing the front end for some crazy reason. What you want to do, I didn't take the time to get the user ID, but instead of just creating the temp table over here, what you do is, here, let's see where I can find it. Okay, you put the user ID as well. Okay, so that each user has their own version.
Okay.
I often use the login, but you know, it's probably better to use the user ID. Do you know what I'm talking about? This way, you make sure that people aren't sharing the temp database because you don't want that.
Yeah, that's always an issue when you're sharing.
But if you label it, you know, with their name, and it doesn't have to be on the C drive, you know, it depends on where you're putting the thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, that depends. Sometimes you do want them to share it. Like if you're making a data warehouse, I usually hang it on a directory under the back end if it's on a LAN or something. And that way, let's say it gets generated at midnight, then no matter when all the managers are going to get together for their meeting, whether they print it out at 9 or 11, I mean, back when people used to print things, at least they all are looking at the same data.
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, but yeah, that's kind of a slightly different purpose than managing data that you're interacting with.
Okay, so now, all right, let's open the form and then I'll show you how that all happens. Okay, so because I only had one table, I wrote, you know, I'm going to show you what it's like when you have multiple tables in one of the later later demos here. Okay, and then you press output and you have a choice of recreating the data or not. Because, you know, if you see that it took 90 minutes and it was done this morning, you really don't want to bother waiting 90 minutes, right? But you may want to. You may do it while you're going out to lunch to recreate, make sure you have the latest data. We'll say recreate it and we have an output. Let's see. Oh, wait, here, look at that. There's temp. And okay, let's And what I want to show you about, because this is where the sort keys come in. Oh. Well, this one didn't, for some reason, didn't put in the short key. Because what it's supposed to do, yeah, let's minimize it again. Let me show you the queries. Okay, query 1. Yes, the output. All right, query 1, design view. Okay, so okay, so this puts the sort key, which comes from this data, but isn't, is a totally different field. And then query 2.
Can I ask you a question? What's the purpose of that? Is that to allow you to sort in the order that you want it
Well,
to sort?
what that's supposed to do, and I'll just have to check why the output didn't work. See here, I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, this one is a total, right? So this way, the third query, there, that's how it's supposed to look on the output. I don't know why it, I must have messed up the code. But this way, you can give the users, you can even put this in a different field on the temp table so that they can get, all the details, and you don't see the sort key. Let me show you. But it's sorted by the sort key.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and you can see how, and then if you want, you can do a grand total. Let me show you how that might work, because it might clarify things. Let's create a grand total. And we take our temp table product spreadsheet, and sort key, and we're going to append query, append to our temp table spreadsheet. And we're going to call this, yes, always have to say okay. Only we're going to say, to make it sure that, it goes at the very end. Okay. And sum. And group by and sum. Well, let's see what this looks like. Not exactly. It's supposed to show just one total. Let me.
You're grouping on product name, which is going to put one record per product.
Yeah,
if you're looking for just a total for the whole entire thing, you have to leave the
right.
product name out.
Let me see something. Oh, I see. I shouldn't be grouping by it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. All right. And let's bring the sort key back in, and this time it should work. Okay, and the sort key is actually going to be doesn't matter if it's capital or not for this purpose. Creates an invalid string. All right, let's see what the problem is with you. Okay. Okay, so now we have a grand total, right? And we're going to append it. Let's make sure we still have the append. Yes. Okay. And yes. And I don't know, we'll call it query grand total. Obviously. This is just because we're going to be, giving this to people. So how about query? How about, 050? Okay, now let's see. Now if we do the output, Where did I? And there it is. But you know what? One more thing we can do. Let's get rid of this. And make our query insert grand total. Total. And that'll go into product name. So let's see if that looks better. Right? Okay. And let's run it. To append one row, that's good. Sure. And then, okay.
Outstanding.
And you can move these columns, or you can add more columns, and I mean, I'll show you something else that's nice. Okay, let's take our clean table, this one, design, and we're going to put in regular price, subtotal, and grand total. Which you could probably do with views, but I think it would be a lot harder.
Are you keeping those short text for a reason, Linda?
Not really.
But those shouldn't they be currency?
It doesn't make any difference.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's change this one. Okay, and we're going to put it into and where is it? Did I pick the wrong table? Oh, I see. It's regular price I want to change. I want to put this into subtotal. Oh, I see. I haven't created the table yet. Let me go create the table. I'm going to just run the output. Okay. Debug. Did I get rid of my?
All right, it's still there.
It doesn't like what I did. I mean, we could try to figure out why. And let's go see what query. I think I know what the problem is. Let's go look at query 30 design, and we want to put in subtotal and grand total. Let's see if that works better. That looks better. Okay. Now let's run the queries. Let's run the okay, do we have, we'll create the temp, let's create the temp table. Couldn't find the query. Did I call it something else? I can see it. Why can't you? Did I change it? It looks good to me. Does anyone see what the problem might be? Let's see what happens if I, let's export it. Export to.
Did that code say 03 instead of 30?
I don't
It was said that before when it worked. I don't think.
I don't know why it is misbehaving, but it is.
It's Microsoft. Stuff happens.
Okay, so let's call it, what happened? Happened. Did I put a dot in? Do I have two dots in? Okay. Okay. So it worked there, but it won't work in the. Okay, so everybody's happy here, but sure. Don't save. I don't care. All right, let's go through the queries again.
Well, I think we get the idea of what you're doing, though, even
Yeah.
though names are different.
Yeah, did you stop the code? Is it still sitting on that same line with the
Yeah,
previous?
it might still be. Yes. Okay, run,
Yeah.
reset. Let's see. I don't know why it's not, behaving properly. Let's try it again, though. Let's try, at least, even if I can't get that one line working, you'll see what the effect would be. Okay, so let's make sure our temp table spreadsheet is blank. It isn't. So let's recreate it. Okay. Now it's blank. Good. I'll run. Yes. Yes. Let's see what query 30 looks like. It's not going where I wanted it to go. Query 20. I mean, it's, because regular price in 20 should go into the subtotal. I probably didn't save it. Okay. And this should go into,
Grand total.
this should go into grand total. Okay, save. Okay, let's recreate the database. Okay, and now run the queries. Let's make sure it's, yep. All right. Yes. 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 And seeing much better. Okay.
Okay,
Looks good, right?
right.
I don't know why so I'm going to run the output again. Hopefully it won't hang up, but if it does. All right, now it liked it. God knows why. Okay, let me show you the code behind all that. Okay. Run test report. Well, that's helpful. Okay. So, you know what? We'll put in query 50 in here as well. Do command open query. Query 050. Okay. So we'll save it. We'll save it. Okay, so let's go through it. We create the data and say yes. It gives you, it tells you, this is now, right? This is when we're starting it. We're going to create the temp tables. Let's skip that. We know that works. Run to cursor. And then we have the end. And start runtime. It's going to say 0 again because it's such, it's so fast. I'll show you what set all is. Let me show you. I have a few extra little Okay, set all sets the hourglass to true and the warnings to false. Okay, I use it all the time, and it's, you know, definitely available for anyone who wants it. Okay,
Okay.
and runs the queries, and we can run to cursor. Okay, and it updates, so it's in this table that we had before. You'll see it changed. And we run the update, and reset all is the opposite of set all. Okay. All right. So I have another demo which has a little more stuff in it. Should I go on to that?
We've got about 15 minutes. So
Okay. All right. So let's go to temp table. What I wanted to show you is how I create it, but I don't know if we're going to have time.
we'll do our best. Well, we won't hold you to the 15 minutes.
Okay. So now you have, when you select which one, and it tells you the, you know, how long it took, right? Okay. And then if we pick report 1, now we can recreate the data. And report 2. Oh. Nice. Okay, report 2. Did I call them both report 10? How
Yeah.
clever. Oh, well. 2. It definitely is going to make a difference.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
I think that's hard coded in there, but
Yeah.
we get the point. We get the idea.
Okay. So let's go through the okay, let me show you how, you know, in the few minutes I have left. But I want to show you how I create the whole concept. All right. And it report, you know, report 2, and report 2 creates its own little database with report 2. Okay.
Okay.
You'll get all this. So if you have a question, but let me show you something. Let's start with an empty database. Okay. Sure. Especially since I messed it up. Oh, I don't want temp. I want, okay, empty. Okay, so what I do is I create a query, and we can take the products I had, you know. Okay, and we don't need all of this. All right, product type, short description, regular. I don't remember. I think I just said product type, and maybe it was just short description. Doesn't really matter. Oh, I guess I need product type instead. Okay, view. Yes. Okay. So now we're going to create a table, make table, and we'll call it temp table products. Okay, and we'll run it. Yes. Okay. And we can go my favorite name for a temp query. Okay, now we take temp table products, copy, paste, just the structure. And we're going to call it clean. Okay, then we get rid of this, or you can save it, put an X at the end in case, something goes wrong and you want to do it again. And now, now you run the okay, and temp table products shows up in its clean form. Did that go too fast, or did I?
No, that's the same thing you did before with a brand new.
Yeah, well, this is what happened. No, it's in real life. What happens? You don't know what the temp table is going to look like initially, right?
Right.
So you first create it with the actual data, and you make it look the way you want, and then you take a blank. Then you make a blank copy of it, and put a clean at the end.
Okay. Oh, okay. I finally have it. So this dawned on me that I would refer to that underscore clean as your template tables. Those are the
Okay, you can call them anything you want.
I mean, in terms of what their function is to provide a template for creating the real temp tables.
Yeah. No, you can, obviously you can call it whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, I'm not talking about a different name, just the concept that they're there to provide a template for what the
And the only other thing I have to do is I want to add the Sortkeys in there. I'm not sure how that happened. Oh, temp table. Oh, that's because the spreadsheet. All right, let's take temp table products clean, design, and Sortkey. No, and Crystal, here it is currency, so I don't know. This was junk data anyway. You can get all sorts of, and if we recreate everything, it'll bring the Sortkey in. So what's nice about it is temp table. Okay, so when you decide you want to add a column or you want to change something, you just go to the clean version and recreate it. I'm not the best teacher. When I was growing up, I was told I had to be either a teacher or a nurse. I said I would rather walk the streets. And I always think that the people, I'm a terrible teacher, so I always think that the people I didn't teach should thank me.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave that to people who are good at it, like Crystal. Yeah.
Okay.
So
I'm going to wrap this up and send it to George so he can redistribute it. And
yeah.
I can just show you some, here. It has set all. It's got ordinal dates. It's got a few extra little things in here if you want.
Okay.
And what's roundup, which really you don't need anymore. Tag toggle, which is really useful if you want to hide things and toggle things on reports, and and they're all yours. And if anybody has any questions, they're totally free to please call me or email me or however you want to contact me.
Well, speaking of questions, are there any questions? I have this bad habit of getting involved in the presentation and forgetting to check chat. Are there any questions, any comments that other people have?
Well, I think this is a really great way to create temporary data. Thanks, Linda.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for thinking nice things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of at least one case where I could have used something like this very successfully with, it was a group of not auditors, but estimators. And they all had to use the same source data,
Yeah,
but they were creating their own versions of the estimates on projects.
right.
So rather than having them clashing over the production data, if I'd known or thought to create something like this, so they could each have their own temp table to do their estimates before they created the final version that they pushed back into the permanent location, that would have been a real bonus. If I could only go back in time 20 years.
I have to also
We lost you. I hope that's not.
looping with the counter. I was, at that time we had the New York Access SIG, and I demoed it, and somebody made it much better, and I've been using the much better version ever since.
Anybody else have a different version of temp tables or different approach?
I'll just chime in for a minute. I've done something very similar. Couple changes. Linda, what you seem to do is right at the beginning of the program or somewhere in the program, recreate every one of your templates. I take a different approach where I have, as it's going through the code, it needs a particular temp table and it creates that at the time. So a front end may or may not have the temporary table, all the temporary tables, depending on the path that the user's taken through it.
Yeah.
And then another thing is for a particular application, it's not so much users, but it's instances of the program, the local front end on one computer. And it turns out that the people I'm targeting, they have to run 3 or 4 or 5 copies of the database to give different scenarios. And these guys are kind of magic. They're juggling all the stuff at once. They need that many. And so I had to come up with a scheme of how to keep the temporary tables distinguished within one user on one computer.
Well, that's why I use the ID in those cases.
Well, it wouldn't work in that case because it's one user. It's all the same user on one computer.
So you'd have to
Yeah, it depends.
you'd have
Yeah.
to you'd
The
have
answer
to,
to everything is, it depends.
Anyway, what I wanted to mention is it's a tip that I picked up, I think, from George probably 6 months ago, using Tempvars.
oh,
And I used to use global variables, but
Yeah.
Tempvars are much better than global variables because they
Yeah.
persist through
right.
a reset.
Good
And
thing.
so what I do is forget the code, but it as they launch each instance of the application, it makes a new temp. It makes a new. It iterates the temp var of the session number that it's on. So one user can have session number 1, number 2, number 3, and
That's
that will make a temp var or a temp database 1, 2, and 3, and it keeps everything separate that way. So. And then I've got I've got a module that's got all the routines for the managing the temp tables within it, and the biggest one within, or the most important, is one that creates the table and links it, does that separately, and it can call that just with one line of code, and it works quite well. Anyway, I found temp tables to be extremely useful.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons I recreated them is this way you don't get this, like when I first started, with, using Access and Temp Tables, the database would start out at 2 megs in the morning and get to be 200 megs at night. So this completely eliminates that issue by creating it completely fresh.
Are there any tips on where you put it? I mean, I know I've heard too. Is there one location that's better than another? Like
I think it depends entirely on the purpose. Lynn, you mentioned, I think earlier, George, if you got several people needing the same information. Obviously, it has to go on a server somewhere. For myself, I tend to put it in the same folder as the front end.
What I do is not for this, not for persistent stuff, but for like error logs and stuff. I map my I run Windows in a virtual environment on a Linux host, and so I create a RAM mount, and then symlink a directory from my C drive to the RAM mount, and then I change the environment variables of Windows to point temp files there, and then I just reference temp as the place where log files go. Then I reboot and it all gets wiped out.
Okay.
You can't, it's hard to do RAM mounts in Windows purely, but it's a huge performance boost for a virtual Windows machine.
Describe that again, because that's an issue with virtual machines. Can you?
Well, on Linux, you can mount you can create a volume in RAM and mount it to your file system.
Oh, okay.
And that just happens at boot. You specify it. There's a configuration table called FSTAB file system table. And you just have a line in there that mounts, it's called a TMPFS, a temporary file system, to the Linux file system. And as you probably know, you can mount anything anywhere on a Linux file system. So it's far more robust than TFS. So what I do is I make that my temp folder, basically, and on my Linux host, and then from within the from the Windows guest machine, I can just symlink to it as a share. So the Linux host is a Samba server, so it's serving SMB shares across the entire home network, but also to my virtual Windows machine that's running on the same hardware. And so I'll create, and I use just the Linux nomenclature in the C drive. I'll create a directory called TMP, which actually will be a directory symbolic link to the shared mount, to the mount point where the Linux RAM drive is. Then all you have to do is change the environment variables in Windows to say that's where the temp files go, or you can just directly in your access code specify C:\TMP as the place where you're going to send all your log files. I haven't quite figured out. Windows can sort of choke when you're installing software if you have the environment variables configured in that way to a remote share, but it doesn't seem to have as much trouble if you set those environment variables to, for example, a D drive. If you've got your C drive on an SSD and a spinning platter drive for your D drive, you can move your temp stuff to the D drive if you want, just to conserve rights on the SSD. George, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I missed the point when you said it first, and I got it. Yeah. So that's a very kind of the next level of what we're talking about. But I think it's something that I would like to have a presentation on at some point, if that's a possibility.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I've had to earn the merit badge on Linux, so I don't know, it's a steep learning curve. I don't know if people haven't been fiddling around with that. I could lose a lot of people, but I'm happy to talk about it.
Let's
But
talk
you
about
wanted to hear about my
Yeah, let's
That's
talk
control.
let's talk about it sometime. Let's talk about that offline because
yeah, definitely.
I put a link in the chat to a database I have posted that has code, my process anyway, to do what Linda demonstrated, just since you asked for examples.
Yep. So there's another approach. Yeah. I think the takeaway for me is that there are a lot of things we could all be doing to improve the performance of our databases, but it requires a little bit of imagination.
I'm fiddling around with the idea of an entry point.
That's a whole nother, another whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's and design automation.
Well, I have been enjoying this, and as usual, I will copy everything out of the chat, post it in the, I'll post the relevant.
I'll send you a revised zip.
Yeah.
And people can take whatever they want out of it.
Yeah. So I will post the comments. I will extract from the chat the relevant comments, post them with the description on YouTube. The zip file with the MDB or the ACCDB will be available on the website, on the AUG website. There's a download section there.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it very much, Linda. That was great. Thank you, Eric, for your contribution, and Crystal.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Tom left early, but I was going to try to pin him down a little bit. He and I are in discussions for a dual presentation either next month or the following month.
Okay.
On alternative ways to migrate your tables to SQL Server. And so the idea, if we can work it out, is he will demonstrate one method, I'll demonstrate the other, and then we can discuss
Sounds interesting.
the pros and cons of both. But for now, I will just have to reach out to him again because he left early and see where he stands with that. Hopefully that will work out.
Also, as I mentioned, I have a rather elaborate reporting scheme where people pick reports and it figures out what they need as parameters, and at any point you want, I can probably demo. You have to give me some notice. This took a bit longer to do than I thought it would, but I enjoyed it. It's important for me to do these things because
I think it's important for us to kind of cross-fertilize our thinking with other ideas.
Yeah.
So with that, I will stop the recording.
Okay.